Welcome, everyone. This is Robservations, episode number 314, coming at you from the Robservatory. I was going to be Robcasting. I wasn't Robcasting. Now I'm Robcasting again, so we're back. Let me sort of start that show. Let me start the show over, if I might. So we're going to just bear with me. So welcome to Robservations, a show about something, episode number 314. I am your host, Robert Meyer Burnett, just trying to figure it all out. And what I was saying is that this is going to be a fun show, and one of the great joys of this program is being able to now feature your videos. And I'm going to play Emil Johansson's One More Time, coming at you from Sweden. So now you can hear me. Now I can do the show properly. So, Emil, one more time. Take it away.
Hello. Just wanted to say thank you for all your videos. They're very insightful, very interesting to listen to, and keep it up. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Emil. And once I can say hello, it's great. Now, here is another video that Calvin Bose sent me. And this is Calvin Bose, a video of his son. And he is a new imagination connoisseur in training, which is fantastic. It's great to, well, you know what? I think you just have to see. Again, this is a new imagination connoisseur, and you will all be witnesses. This comes from his dad, Calvin Bose.
The video, okay? This is on the man that shooting a finger is not that good. Habit it doesn't work on chip. That's okay. We can find out a different. We have no different charges. Now we gotta get again. Good job. Again. I do.
Well, I want to thank him for sending that in. It's nice to see a new member of the landing party join us. Always a good time. And again, I encourage everybody, when I can make it work, I encourage everybody to send me their videos wherever you are in the world, as long as you're comfortable with it and it's okay. I just assume that if you send me videos that it's okay to play them. And I don't know where Calvin and his son and clearly his mom is. Somewhere in the world, I would assume the United States. And I don't claim any copyright to Braxton's song. That is Braxton's song. I abdicate any kind of claims to ownership or copyright right now. But I want to thank him for sending that video along of his son. It's nice to see that he has a well-equipped landing party in his house because, you know, it wouldn't be good if he was ill-equipped beaming down to a planet. I like also the kudos to Braxton for having the imagination to mix the original series and the next generation together, because that shows more imagination than the entire production staff of Star Trek Discovery. So kudos to you, Braxton. I think you have a bright future. Now, today, there was a subject that I got a lot of emails from people, a lot of direct messages about this subject. So I figured, oh, great. Once again, I don't have to look very far for something to discuss. And that is, of course, this news that Warner Brothers signed a deal for an AI-driven film management system. Now, this is from The Hollywood Reporter, and it was posted yesterday afternoon by Tatiana Siegel. And it starts out, resistance is futile. Warner Brothers has become the latest studio to publicly embrace artificial intelligence. The movie division has signed a deal with Synalytic to use the latter's AI-driven project management system that was launched last year. Under the new deal, Warner's will leverage the system's comprehensive data and predictive analytics to guide, this is scary, to guide decision-making at the green light stage. At the green light stage, that is when a movie is, when they decide to pull the trigger and actually make a film. The integrated online platform can assess the value of a star in any territory and how much a film is expected to make in theaters and on other ancillary streams. Yeesh. It goes on. Founded 4 years ago by Tobias Quizier, Synalytic has been building and beta testing the platform for 3 years. In 2018, the company raised $2.25 million from T&B Media Global and signed deals with Igneous Media, who put out Wind River, and Productivity Media, The Little Hours, STX, which endured a number of flops in 2019, including Playmobil and Ugly Dolls, became a Synalytic client in September. While the platform won't necessarily predict what will be the next $1 billion surprise like Warner's hit Joker, it will reduce the amount of time executives spend on low-value, repetitive tasks and instead give them better dollar figure parameters for packaging, marketing, and distribution decisions, including release dates. The platform is particularly helpful in the festival setting, where studios get caught in bidding wars and plunk down massive sums after only hours of assessment, as happened with New Line's $15 million acquisition of Blinded by the Light out of last year's Sundance Film Festival. The Synalytic AI's insight might also have altered decision-making on some of Warner's misfires from 2019, such as The Kitchen, Shaft, and Godzilla King of the Monsters. The system can calculate in seconds what used to take days to assess by a human when it comes to general film package valuation or a star's worth, said Quizier. Adds Tanias Kills, Senior VP of Distribution, we make tough decisions every day that affect what and how we produce and deliver films to theaters around the world. And the more precise our data is, the better we will be able to engage our audiences. Still, Hollywood fancies itself a town that operates on gut instinct rather than algorithms, for better or for worse. And unlike Silicon Valley, the industry has been slow to use AI for more menial tasks like script breakdowns, fearful that it will take away jobs and make humans obsolete. Quizier counters that narrative. I've pronounced this guy's name like 10 different times. Artificial intelligence sounds scary, but right now an AI cannot make any creative decisions, he says. What it is good at is crunching numbers and breaking down huge data sets and showing patterns that would not be visible to humans. But for creative decision making, you still need experience and gut instinct. Well, ladies and gentlemen, what do I think of this? Well, I'll tell you what I do think. I think Gilbert's here. Gilbert is here. It's almost like I cued him. No, I really didn't cue him. Would you like a cookie, Gilbert? I don't have very many left. Who's going to come up? Oh, I dropped one. No, Gilbert, come here. See, I dropped a cookie. Come on. There you go, buddy. Because everybody likes to see you come on the show. Huh? Would you like one more cookie? I'm running out of cookies. Your sister has to get her cookie too. Ladies and gentlemen, everyone always make it a point to make sure that the sister gets a cookie too. Okay. That's it. That's 3 for you. 3 for you. All right, buddy. Okay, you guys. Good boy, good girl. There you go. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the Gilbert and Tallulah twosome gruesome. Gruesome twosome. I don't know. Whatever you want to call it. They were here on the show. Now, here's what's interesting to me about this article. First of all, you can run, but you cannot hide from AI. AI is going to be affecting every facet of our lives in ways you can't possibly imagine. There was a really interesting, I think it was a Frontline documentary on AI that's available on YouTube that I would suggest everybody watch. And if you want to know if you found the right one, it begins with the account of a Korean Go master, a master of the ancient game Go, playing a computer. I think in 2015, they programmed a computer to play Go, and no one thought a computer could possibly beat a human being. Not only did the computer, well, you know what? I'll let you discover the joys of this, but I highly recommend everybody watch that Frontline special because it's definitely worth watching, and everybody should really understand what AI is. And in the case of things like deep learning AI, we have a little ways before we're going to come up with Skynet or Colossus or even the operating systems of Her. It's going to be a while before that happens. But in terms of practical applications, and as they said in this article, data crunching, it could be a very, very, very much so a useful tool. But really, what I see as being the threat, as this article talks about, we're going to pick which movies to greenlight. Now, as everyone knows, I think that stories and movies, just like novels or television shows or comic books or video games or anything that has a story, ultimately, it's going to take a long time before an AI can really understand, I think, how a story, if a story is worth telling. I think it's one thing, okay, you can look at trends in countries. You can say, okay, which movie stars are making money, who are people going to see. All of that information is absolutely essential, and it helps make decisions in terms of what movies to greenlight. But what's going to happen, what I see happening, is William Goldman, who wrote a great book that it's a little dated now. The references are dated because it's an older book. But if you guys are interested in reading what I thought was an essential book about the motion picture industry, you have to read William Goldman's book, Adventures in the Screen Trade. Now, William Goldman wrote the novel, The Princess Bride. I believe he wrote the screenplay as well. He also wrote things like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. He's one of the most celebrated screenwriters of all time. And I think that one of the things that he says, his famous Hollywood adage, is that nobody knows anything. Now, obviously in Hollywood, where so much money is at stake and every movie is a crapshoot, anything that they can look upon to help them make decisions about which movies they should make, it's understandable that they'll use them. And I completely understand that. I completely get it. However, the danger here is the people that get really successful in Hollywood are not people that are following analytical trends. They're people that set them. And if you look at the great successes in Hollywood, let's go back to the days of things like The Exorcist or Jaws or Star Wars, the movies that are considered to be the watershed moments, especially Star Wars, in terms of blockbuster filmmaking, the summer movie season, all of those different kinds of things. Now, I don't necessarily think that you could say, okay, you know, The Godfather as a book, as written by Mario Puzo, certainly it was selling well. But if you know anything about the production of The Godfather, the people that they wanted to be in the movie, Robert Redford playing Michael Corleone, not even the studio wanted Al Pacino. And can you imagine if you had had a data set and they'd picked the most bankable box office draws around the world at the time based on deep learning AI and what those results were? Francis Ford Coppola would never have been able to make The Godfather in its present form. So much of movie making, indeed storytelling, is about authorship. And one of the things that I think is being lost, especially, well, I've watched it. As many of you know, I used to work in feature production at Warner Brothers. I began my career. Now, I was a management trainee. I was a lowly a functionary that was not much of a step up from gopher. Go for this, go for that. But I kept my eyes and ears open, and I was in and out of all of the most powerful people at Warner Brothers' offices multiple times a day, including having conversations with those people and asking questions and seeing things. And no matter what your analytics are and anybody knows, any data sets you can be looking. Now, AI is going to allow a much more three-dimensional deep dive into these kinds of data sets, and I get it. I understand. You have to be as risk-averse as possible, and when you're armed with information is power. But what I fear is that many great projects, movies that might become transcendent. I mean, would The Matrix, with Keanu Reeves in the lead role in 1999, would that movie have gotten made if somebody looked at Keanu Reeves's analytics in terms of what deep AI came back with? And I'm talking about the Keanu Reeves of 1999. He had previously starred in a cyber thriller directed by Robert Longo, Johnny Mnemonic. Now, based on that, would an AI have come back and said, oh yeah, the Wachowski brothers who made a lesbian crime thriller, Bound, are the perfect people to direct Keanu Reeves in a cyber thriller? I can't imagine that would have been greenlit. Now, luckily, based on the presentation that the Wachowskis gave, using amazing artwork and using amazing visuals, were able to convince the Warner Brothers brass that yes, indeed, this would have been made. This movie should be made. And they let them. I famously read once, I think somebody said, we don't really understand it, but we know it's going to look good. Something along those lines. And it was greenlit. The Matrix was greenlit, I think, for $65 million, which for what they were doing was not a whole lot of money. As a matter of fact, yeah. By the way, if you like movies, this is an essential book, The Art of the Matrix. I mean, there's so many The Art of books now, but, this was, 20 years old. Definitely something worth owning if you want. One of the better art of books that have ever come out. There's a lot of amazing, interesting stuff in there. But that's what I worry about. Once you're getting these analytics back, you're paying for these analytics, that I worry. I mean, how many science fiction shows or books, or how many things have you read where deep learning AI or some overzealous executive shows up in a boardroom meeting? I mean, all the way back to Big. I always go back to the scene where Tom Hanks is now, Billy, right, has grown up to be Tom Hanks, and he's in a meeting, and somebody, brings in a robot that turns into a building, or something like that. Well, what's the fun of that? And it takes the childlike wonder of a kid in a boardroom meeting to make the executives understand the errors of their ways. Well, it's hard enough to get innovative movies made in Hollywood as it is. But now with this kind of technology, I think it doesn't allow for, look, I don't care what anybody says. Executives are going to fall back on it. Boardroom members are going to fall back on it and be like, look what the analytics say. And I think that the kind of movies that become timeless, the kind of projects that change people's lives, are going to fall by the wayside. They're going to fall by the wayside. And I think, well, at least, I mean, who knows? I'm just going by what this article was all about. And when it talks about green lighting movies, and they're looking at analytics, again, previous analytics that I understand. You have to look at these things. Everybody would look at these things. I get it. But, when they bring up something like Blinded by the Light. Blinded by the Light was a $15 million acquisition. Now, was the movie good? I'll let you decide. I think it's a pretty good movie. It's got Bruce Springsteen songs in it. It's an irresistible story. Now, did the movie fail because they shouldn't have acquired it? Or did the movie fail because once they spent $15 million, the marketing teams were not innovative enough, did not know enough how to sell that film to the public? And I think, look, it used to be that marketing people had to take a movie that they were given, and they had to bring their A game. They were madmen, movie madmen, and women. They came up with interesting, unique ways to sell films, taglines. I mean, I hark back to, it's funny to think of now, but back in the day in the late 70s, even though Godfather 2 was a great sequel and Rocky 2 worked, most sequels were not highly thought of. And when Jaws 2 came out, they came up with an ad line that even resonates to this day. Just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water. Jaws 2. Sold. You know, these ad lines were part of the movie campaign, movie marketing campaign. They were very, very important. When was the last time you heard a movie ad line from today? They don't really have them anymore. The movie marketing departments don't do that. Key art is not nearly as important anymore. Trailers are important too. But, you know, I can think back to Star Trek 4. The ad line for Star Trek 4 on the poster was, "How on earth can they save the future?" Get it? I mean, that was some great stuff. Star Trek the Motion Picture, There Is No Comparison, or The Human Adventure Is Just Beginning, which was actually used in the movie itself. But, you know, who would have thought, if you're following certain trends, if you look at some of the most successful movies ever made, they wouldn't have gotten greenlit based on whatever technology you're using. And just because some machine can data mine in a three-dimensional way, more data and many different analytics and measuring things, movies still have a quality of alchemy to them. There is a magic, and that magic is putting the right people, the right talent together, maybe finding the right material with the right talent. All of that stuff is alchemy, and it's an ineffable quality. It's not something you can measure. You don't know what's going to happen. And if they start curtailing what could be, look, I've always believed, from what I've seen, that the reasons that movies don't always work correctly is because there is a failure at some point in the process. And a lot of the time, the movies that should have been greenlit don't get greenlit. And movies, because there's relationships, there's other things happening, and that's why certain movies happen and other movies don't. But the idea that an AI is going to step in and do this, well, look, AI is going to affect all parts of our lives. You can't run away from it. It's here. It's here, ladies and gentlemen. It's not going away. But the idea that the stories that we're going to experience, the movies that we're going to see made in the future are going to be decided simply by artificial intelligence, I think is something we should guard against. We should be ever vigilant against it. And let's hope, because we already live in a society where we're being given entertainments that they're pre-marketed. They figure out, are people going to go for this or not? On the other hand, I do see that we are living in a golden age. There's a lot of great things. Carnival Row, for instance, while the TV series wasn't perfect, it was based on a script that's almost 20 years old that was written by Pacific Rim's Travis Beacham. I love that script. I love that world. And to finally see it get made, and it was beautifully made. The plot might have not been as tight or as maybe explored as it could have been, but I think it was a great effort. Really liked the show. Would an AI have picked Carnival Row, a script that had been lying around for 20 years? Would that have gotten made? I don't know. Would that TV show have gotten made? I don't know. Pick your favorite movie. Would an AI have picked The Shawshank Redemption to get made, or Woody Allen's Annie Hall or Manhattan, or When Harry Met Sally, or Back to the Future? Would Back to the Future have been a movie that an AI would have picked, and then it wouldn't have been picked, so it wouldn't have been greenlit? I mean, all of those movies, who knows? Who knows if they would? But the people that make films are people. It's human beings. They should be the people that ultimately are in charge of picking those stories. They should be the people that use their guts. And when you're at that level, the great producers, the great moguls of yore made movies based on their gut instincts because they knew story. They had read. They were literate people. And that's what we have to guard against. So a lot of people ask me, do I think this is a good thing or a bad thing? Ultimately, more information and having data sets at your fingertips is always a good thing. You can never go wrong with more information. However, the danger is allowing that information to supersede the gut instinct of what is a great story. You know, what is that great story and that great talent that you put that story together with that makes our movie magic. And I don't think AI is anywhere near a position to make those kinds of decisions. I don't know. What do you guys think? But it is interesting, and it's going to start affecting all walks of our lives, every single thing. And again, it's just another tool. But what I am fearful of is we are inherently lazy, ladies and gentlemen, and I would hate to think that AI will ever replace the decision-making process on what movies to greenlight. Because that would be a damn shame, a real shame. But you know, we'll see, and we'll see how it works. You know what? I've never seen a story before, a movie where ultimately it was those analytics, the pencil pushers that win out. It's always the human spirit, you know. Anyway, Willow Yang is here, ladies and gentlemen, in more ways than one. Let me tell you. Willow said, you probably noticed that a lot of TNG episodes with Deanna Troi has her either getting seduced or assaulted. She might be the counselor, but she probably needs to get counseling herself after the child, the survivors, menage a Troi violations, and man of the people. Yes, I agree. I think the reason for that is because she was a Beta Z. She's a Beta Z, and she's empathic. That they used her empathy and things about her to look. The story of Man of the People is it's one of the most chilling Star Trek The Next Generation episodes. I don't want to ruin it for anybody because, you know, if you haven't seen the episode, but basically a diplomat, it really is the needs of the one versus the needs of the many story. And it's quite monstrous. And what happens to Troi in that story, by the way, that is peak. That's never, I think, an episode that people think about in terms of Patrick Stewart, but he's really good in Man of the People. It's a fantastic episode of Star Trek, if not very, very, very disturbing. Stubble McShave sends in a super chat and asks, will this AI kill out of the box ideas? That's what I'm wondering. You know, if you go in and make a pitch now, do you have to already have your analytics in your hand? I just think that ultimately, look, when you're spending hundreds of millions of dollars to make movies, I get it. You know, any information you have that will keep you armed against that kind of thing is important. You know, you don't want to lose money. You don't want to lose money, not when millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars are at stake. But I just don't think that the best stories are ever going to be like, you can pick your elements, but it doesn't matter. You can do look, how many movie stars that everyone thought they were bankable until they're not, until they have a movie that doesn't perform as well as they would have thought. People aren't just going to the movies because of a movie star. That's part of the reason, sure. I mean, but what ultimately is selling, and I've always believed this, it's the movie itself. It's the story, as all stories. It's the story and the characters. Is it interesting? Does it get people interested to come into the theater? Now, who's in it might, who made it might, but ultimately it has to be a satisfying experience. And you can't ever tell if you're just looking at analytics, because there is magic and alchemy involved in movies. And you can't necessarily ever decide or know, is this going to work? And then you might even have the greatest souffle of all time. But sometimes souffles don't work either. They deflate. They don't work. And it's happened to the best of us. But on the other hand, you know, having more information is obviously should inform you. But who knows? Trends change. People fall out of favor. You never know when somebody who is a squeaky clean example of goodness then suddenly has scandal in their lives or something, and then your analytics are out the window. Making movies is a risky business. I understand why they want to mitigate that risk. But yes, Stubble, I think that this AI is going to kill the ability to people trust their gut in the room, buy a pitch in the room. They're going to spend all their time doing analytics now to figure out what movies that we want. And all we're going to be getting is analytics that are based on movies we've already seen. Because you can't give somebody movies on analytics on movies you haven't seen. So I think absolutely it's going to kill the out-of-the-box ideas. I really do. And I think that's really unfortunate. Hopefully we can... I just looked up. Mark C. sent in a $2 super chat. Somewhere, somehow, someone's going to pay. If memory serves, that was the ad line for Commando. That's what I'm talking about. You know, you remember those things. I think I'm right, Mark. I think I'm right. Who knows? Anthony Gonzalez says that scene from Into Darkness where Khan is jumping and flipping and wiping out a Klingon garrison by himself. Is he genetically engineered? Yes, but so are the Jem'Hadar, and Klingons fought them with no problem. Gums bleeding. Look, Star Trek Into Darkness might very well be the dumbest, most nonsensical science fiction movie ever made. And I've seen things that are dumb and nonsensical. I like them all more than I like Star Trek Into Darkness. But I find that movie to be unbelievably offensive to my sensibilities. None of it makes any sense at all. None of it. Not one. I mean, hey, this Starfleet admiral that's up to no good is building a super secret Federation dreadnought in orbit around Jupiter, and he has a model of that very same dreadnought in his office. And no one thinks to go, hey, I've never seen a black dreadnought starship like this. What is this? Is this some super secret project I'm not supposed to know about? Peter Weller, I don't know, man. I've never seen that before in my life. Well, how come it's on the desk in your office? I don't know, man. The worst, Anthony. The worst. That movie is hateful. I cannot tell you how much I dislike Star Trek Into Darkness. As a matter of fact, if I told you how much I dislike it, it wouldn't be enough because I can't convey to you. I would literally have to open up a vein and bleed all over the screen for you to understand just how much hatred I have for that movie. Louis Yu, he sent in a letter. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. He did. Dear Rob, you ask and you shall receive. We've had so many great letters lately, so I thought I should do my part to contribute to the Post-Geek Singularity. I really don't have anything that is controversial in the news to discuss, but I would like to share something that I've always thought about. The subject that I want to talk about is foreign films. Are you all talking to Louis now? Is he in the chat? Is he out there? It's foreign films. I've always thought that foreign films have always gotten a bad rap because of its lackluster box office take due to its limited release in the theaters. After all, these days most moviegoers are more enticed to movie franchises or big-budget blockbusters. So, in comparison, the foreign films would seem to be underperforming against the better-marketed domestic films. It is my hope that by the end of this letter, some of us can look at foreign films from a different perspective. Let me start by saying that I love watching foreign films. I love watching films from Akira Kurosawa to Federico Fellini, Wong Kar-wai to Jean-Luc Godard, and countless other directors. Uh-oh, Gilbert. No, you don't get that, buddy. I had a garbage bag here that Gilbert can't wait to get into, and I'm not going to let him. I've been watching them since I was a young lad growing up in Lisbon. How very cool is that? Now, I'm a huge fan of films from around the world, and Wong Kar-wai is easily one of my most favorite directors working today. I know everyone knows In the Mood for Love, but I would definitely, you've got to go back when Quentin Tarantino, to be honest, I had not seen a Wong Kar-wai film until Quentin Tarantino, back in the 90s, he used his clout to start Rolling Thunder and distributed movies like Chungking Express. Criterion did put out a Blu-ray of Chungking Express that is out of print, but Chungking Express is the first movie I saw by Wong Kar-wai, and I loved it. If you ever watch Chungking Express, there's also an offshoot, a sequel, sort of a pseudo-sequel that was going to be a part of Chungking Express, but ended up not being a part of it, called Fallen Angels. They're kind of, watch Chungking Express and Fallen Angels together as a double feature. But then Wong Kar-wai went on to make things like In the Mood for Love. He made his version of the Ip Man story, The Grand Master. The guy is an amazing, amazing filmmaker, an incredible romantic, and he works with director of photography Christopher Doyle quite a bit. I love him. Among one of the very first foreign films that I ever saw was the 1977 Star Wars. Yep. To me, that was a foreign film. That was as foreign of a film as I ever saw. Let me explain. Since my family immigrated to Portugal in 1976, I was still in the process of learning Portuguese and English, along with getting acclimated to a new country. In 1977, my Portuguese and English were still somewhat limited, as Chinese was still my primary language at the time. I know it sounds strange to be talking about Star Wars as a foreign film, but that was what it was to me at the time. Now, I don't exactly remember if the movie was dubbed in Portuguese or spoken in English with subtitles, but I do remember that it was not in Chinese. This film has remained a lasting impression on me and a favorite memory during my years in the country. Yes, strange to think, right, that we as Americans, we just think of all of our movies as ours, but the rest of the world is a big place, and there's a lot more people out there than there are people here. So yes, to somebody, Star Wars was indeed a foreign film, and of course, our moderator. I get it. I understand the challenges of reading the letters at the bottom of the screen is often too distracting to enjoy the film at the same time. What I've always pondered is this: what if I, or anyone, literally took Star Wars as a foreign film? The funny thing about it is that I had never considered that was what it was when I was watching the film. If memory serves me, I did not even fully understand the entire film until much later, through second and countless viewings after, but reading the subtitles was not a factor in determining if I wanted to see the film. No language barrier was going to prevent me from watching Star Wars, as it was the movie that everybody was talking about in school. So why are so many people hesitant about watching foreign films? I'm not sure what the root cause is. Perhaps it's the age demographics of moviegoers, the targeted marketing, or just lack of access to them. I know that we have a diverse audience here in the Post-Geek Singularity, but I would like for everyone in this new year to try and watch a foreign film, preferably one in a foreign language after their own. Foreign films give us a taste of other cultures that we rarely see. It is a unique opportunity for us to take a glimpse into their history, lifestyles, religion, or social environments. Just in the last few years, I've seen some great films like Shadow, I Am Not Madame Bovary, Tony Erdmann, Shoplifters, Burning, Parasite, and Atlantics, on Netflix, by the way. So please give foreign films a try. You won't regret it. I leave you with this quote from Parasite director Bong Joon-ho, who won the Golden Globe for Best Foreign Language Film last Sunday. Once you overcome the 1-inch-tall barrier of subtitles, you will be introduced to so many more amazing films. Take care, Rob. Sincerely, Lewis Yu. Well, some people might consider or think of me playing favorites by reading Lewis's letter, but you know, it's a great letter, and absolutely, Lewis is right. That's why he's a moderator. He's a very smart man. I've never looked at foreign films as being foreign. To me, they were just movies from other countries in the world. I understand. I mean, I get the idea, but I'm like, growing up in Seattle and going to the Seattle Film Festival, Dutch movies, for whatever reason, there were a lot of Dutch movies that played in Seattle. And I was able to meet like Monique van de Ven. I know no one's ever heard of her, but she's a very famous Dutch star. She was in Turkish Delight with Rutger Hauer. And director Fons Rodemaker, who made The Assault, which I think won Best Foreign Film in 1985. I think they were married, actually. Renee Stoutzendijk, who's in my beloved The Fourth Man, and in Paul Verhoeven's Spetters. So I was watching a lot of Dutch cinema growing up, including Paul Verhoeven's earlier films. What's interesting to me is watching films from around the world, like Lewis said, you just get different perspectives. Even the way people just look at one of my favorite foreign films is a Swedish film directed by Lasse Hallström called My Life as a Dog, which is a coming-of-age story. And just the way they deal with sexuality and childhood and things like that seemed a lot more raw, open, honest, and sweet. Something that it covers topics that we would never really cover in an American film without some kind of controversy. And it's a lot of fun. It's a great movie. I mean, I grew up watching Bergman movies as well. And, of course, samurai movies from Japan or martial arts films from China. There's so many, but not just genre cinema. There's so many great movies out there. Of course, I mean, we talk about Tarkovsky. And Tarkovsky made 3 of what I would consider the greatest fantasy films ever made, which is Solaris, Stalker, and, of course, his last film, The Sacrifice. And, I mean, admittedly, Tarkovsky movies are a little sometimes difficult to get through if you're not in the right mindset. But I do think that watching foreign films is absolutely the way we should go. And if you're not watching foreign cinema, if you're afraid of subtitles, you're missing out on not just great movies, but you're missing out on a perspective of the world, a unique perspective of the world that you would not get anywhere else. So, speaking of foreign films, here is another letter from the Philippines, from Jacques Wong. Hi, Robert. Happy 2020. This is Jack from the Philippines. I always watch John Campy's show since Collider, and I love the fact that you two can disagree and still be okay. I have also recently subscribed and regret not subscribing earlier. Since you are more of an anime guy than John, I would recommend my favorite sports anime is Haikyuu. It is about volleyball. One thing I like about this is that it provides the slice of life and that they portray their opponents evenly. It also shows that in reality, people work hard but still lose. It's also a sports anime without superpowers. Another is Demon Slayer, Kimetsu no Yaiba. I believe this was mentioned on a recent John Campy show. It was. But this is one of the more celebrated anime for 2019. This is about a guy who lost his family to demons who eat humans. His sister gets infected and he's trying to find a cure. By doing so, he joins the Demon Slayer Corps, which is a secret organization to fight and kill these demons and prevent more people from being victimized. Sounds good to me. One thing nice aside from the story and action is that they also show the side of the demon and how they came to be. You can actually feel sorry for the demon at times. That sounds really good. Anyway, thank you for taking the time to read this again and have a great 2020 ahead. Editor's note, there is a trailer for Haikyuu. Wow. Now, if you want to see this trailer, I will put this in the live chat. Jack's letter. Let me put it here. We have it up on the Burnettwork.net website, and there is a link in it to the YouTube trailer for the anime about volleyball, which that's kind of crazy that there is a volleyball anime, which is crazy. Ashley Short sent in a tip. Ashley says, "Hi, Rob. Like you, I'm a physical media fiend. Fiend, I tell you, particularly steelbooks. I recently purchased the X-Men Dark Phoenix steelbook. Bill Sienkiewicz artwork elevates the whole product tenfold. What's the last steelbook you purchased?" You know what the last steelbook I purchased? I have it here. I know. I've shown it before. It's The Shining. I got the 4K Shining. I mean, normally I wouldn't, but since it's Kubrick, I went off. I have a number of steelbooks, but I didn't collect them. There is a steelbook set that I did not buy that I regret, and that was the 10 Star Trek movies. They came in a steelbook for the 50th anniversary, but they were only available from Italy. And I thought about getting them. I ended up buying the Star Trek The Motion Picture one so I could put my director's edition in that steelbook. Steelbooks are really cool. They're really cool. But it was a rabbit hole I didn't want to go down. But I have a number. Some of my favorite steelbooks, the Tom Cruise movie Edge of Tomorrow, Cliff Stevenson, my buddy Cliff, Cliffy Boy, as I like to say, or Geek Santa Claus, as he is known by. Cliff is a phenomenal DVD special features producer. He got me the Japanese steelbook for Edge of Tomorrow, which was released in Japan under its original title, the title of the manga, All You Need Is Kill. And why they didn't call the movie All You Need Is Kill, not necessarily because it's kind of a funky title, but what are you going to remember? All You Need Is Kill or Edge of Tomorrow? I mean, All You Need Is Kill is something that once it's in your head, it's like, well, that's cool. I dig that. So, yeah, I mean, I have a number of steelbooks. I have a few Bond steelbooks. I do have Infinity War and Endgame. I got those steelbooks just because they were cool. You know, it's like the two of those two are something cool to have. And there's a lot of steelbooks I have sprinkled throughout my collection. But if I did, because there's a lot of really cool steelbooks. You know, I bought the steelbook for Humanoids from the Deep, just because as far as Corman movies go, that's a particular favorite. Great James Horner score in Humanoids from the Deep. But yeah, so I don't collect steelbooks. I'm not a fiend for them, but if one comes out that I particularly like, I would get it. I didn't realize Bill Sienkiewicz did the Dark Phoenix steelbook. I'll have to get that. I would get it just because I love Bill Sienkiewicz. Jet Screamer sent in a super chat and said, "Foreign film, The Idiots." Yikes! Would that be the Lars von Trier Idiots? Yeah. Stubble McShave sends in a tip and says, "I saw that Gun, Jonathan Lethem's book, Gun with Occasional Music, will be adapted into a TV series with my fellow countryman Johan Rennick, director of Chernobyl, directing. I'm officially excited. This could be great." It's funny. I'm looking. Actually, I can't. I'd have to get up and walk down. I love Gun with Occasional Music by Jonathan Lethem, and you know, if somebody's digging into that well, all bets are off. If we're gonna actually see a Gun with Occasional Music, that's the name of the book, Gun with Occasional Music. If we're gonna see that series directed by Johan Rennick, wow, that's why I'm saying, like, I don't think an AI would come up with that and say, you know, Jonathan Lethem's 20-year-old book, Gun with Occasional Music, we should turn that into a TV series. I'll bet an AI wouldn't come up with that one. That's why I say that it's absolutely important that we allow human beings to still chart our own destiny. I think that's incredibly important. So, yes. Now, ladies and gentlemen, why make you wait? Why? I'm not going to make you wait, because this cracked me up. To know her is to love her, ladies and gentlemen. I love getting some of that sweet, sweet Willow talk, and you're about to get some. And boy, Willow doesn't disappoint. Greetings, Rob. Willow, take it away. Greetings, Rob. After having watched Netflix's The Witcher, I have to say that Entertainment Weekly was kind in their review of the show. The Witcher is by far the worst piece of garbage that I've had the misfortunes of subjecting myself to in the year of 2019. If you are going to cast a magnificent specimen like Henry Cavill as the lead in an adult fantasy show and you don't feature numerous shots of his bare buttocks and big swinging sword, and no, I'm not referring to the one that he's carrying on his back, you've lost me as a viewer. Episode 5 featured a sex scene that had him fully clothed for the entire duration. It was simply the most moronic artistic decision made in the history of cinema. A complete and utter waste of an actor's talents and assets, and a crime against humanity. I don't know who the talentless hack responsible for this abomination is, only that they're likely blind or brain dead or both. And I certainly hope that they never get to hold a camera again, because they obviously don't know what's important to show on screen. Okay, so if you're going into The Witcher hoping to see a lot of naked Henry Cavill, you are going to be disappointed. In all seriousness, The Witcher is not Game of Thrones, in spite of the understandable comparisons that have been made. Game of Thrones is, when it's at its best, a high-stakes political drama that happens to be set inside a fantastical world of magic and dragons. The Witcher is much more of a fantasy show that engages the audience on a more basic level. I haven't read the books or played the video games, so I don't know how much influence the show took from either source. I will just say that I found the first 3 episodes to be rather mediocre. For me, it did feel quite a bit like a live-action video game. The main character would go places, talk to various NPCs to receive quests, and then go complete the quests. Even the fight sequences were very reminiscent of video games, and I don't mean that as a criticism, just an observation. Geralt has various abilities and items in his inventory. He switches between melee weapons and magic depending on how the fight is going. He uses potions to help him along. While decently entertaining, I didn't feel that a show started off particularly strong, and I can understand the somewhat lukewarm reviews that it has been receiving from the critics. Fortunately, the story of The Witcher did significantly improve for me episode 4 onwards, as the 3 main storylines began converging. It was then that the direction of the show became apparent to me, and it stopped feeling like an episodic video game adventure and much more like an actual narrative. While I still found the dialogue to be a little subpar, I really appreciated all the world building that was being done. The different kingdoms and classes and monsters and mythology. Of course, I got a huge kick out of all the action and spectacle, the magic and different types of powers, the big set pieces, the exciting sword fights, and gloriously violent battles. The first season has managed to set up quite a beautiful and intricate universe, and I look forward to exploring it further. Wow, this review is taking a turn, Willow. In spite of the somewhat lackluster dialogue, I liked most of the characters. I thought Cavill did a fine job as Geralt, and no, it's not because I enjoy staring at his firm tush as he walks around in the film. The role of the strong, silent type didn't exactly stretch his chops as an actor, but he was able to bring a sufficient amount of charisma and wit to a character that could have easily been dull and cliched, and he certainly knows how to wield a blade. I thought Anya Chalotra was fantastic as Yennefer. Again, she could have easily been just an archetype, but her character was provided with a lot of complexity and a great backstory, and she's also a complete badass. Freya Allen Sri, for me, was the least interesting of the 3 leads, and I don't blame the actors for it. I just felt she wasn't given as much to do in the first season of the show. I do look forward to seeing her grow and develop in the coming season. The only recurring character that didn't work for me was Jaskier, a.k.a. the Bard. To give him credit, I say it's Jaskier. Sorry. He did have a few decent comedic moments, and I appreciated the contrast between him and the stoic Geralt. In general, however, I just found him to be an insufferable nuisance. I cannot buy into him being a ladies' man. Granted, maybe the women that would have different standards. If he had tried making a pass at me, I'd have whacked him over the head with a club. Geralt, for all of his attempts to act tough, is too much a softie in my opinion. If I had been in his position in the 5th episode, where Jaskier, due to his own idiocy, gets infected by a genie, I certainly wouldn't have gone through all the trouble and risked my life trying to save him. Sorry, but you brought this on to yourself. Bye. I will conclude this letter with a brief summary of my overall thoughts on the first season of The Witcher. I don't think that The Witcher is particularly highbrow, per se. Someone going into the series expecting it to be Game of Thrones will probably come out disappointed. In my opinion, however, the intent of The Witcher was never to mimic the serious political drama of Game of Thrones. The show itself is self-aware and fully embraces its sense of whimsy and humor. When seen for what it is, the show certainly succeeds in being an entertaining fantasy adventure with plenty of exciting action sequences, likable main characters, and an interesting world and premise. The season finale has certainly set up a compelling story, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how it will unfold in the next season. Also, even though I might have been exaggerating a little bit in my intro to this letter, you weren't exaggerating. Come on. I really hope that we will see more of Henry Cavill. I mean, we've seen a lot of Anya Chalotra, which is totally fine, of course, and I don't think there needs to be more balance between the genders. Don't you agree? Best, Willow. Well, I haven't seen much of The Witcher yet, but, you know, if I'm not looking at Henry Cavill's bare buttocks for most of the show, what good is it? I mean, come on. That guy is a hunka burning love, man. When he came out in Man of Steel with his bare chest, come on, even I swooned. I'm not beyond that. So I get where you're coming from, Willow. But once again, an unexpected surprise from Willow Yang, a review of Witcher. And I think that's tremendous. This letter comes from Big T Moore. Hi, Rob, the Count of the Post-Geek Singularity. Just catching up on things recorded over the festive period, and I just watched... What do you want? Gilbert, you just came in here and barked? Just catching up on things recorded over the festive period, and I just watched Mark Gaddis's and Stephen Moffat's 2019 3 episodes of Dracula. I know that just dropped on Netflix. I really enjoyed it. Great dialogue and visuals. Not as good as Sherlock, but on par with Moffat's 2007 Jekyll. I also enjoyed the documentary that followed the last episode, In Search of Dracula, with Mark Gaddis, in which he explores and celebrates Dracula in pop culture. Wow, I didn't know that was there. In it, he talks about the classic Universal and Hammer horror films, which I've seen, but also a couple I've missed and fancy adding to my collection. Count Dracula 1977, the BBC, with the great French actor Louis Jourdan. I love Louis Jourdan. He's awesome. He was in a Bond movie. And Octopussy. And Dracula, 1979, Universal Studios, based on the stage play with Frank Langella. Well, let me just tell you, the Frank Langella's Dracula, which was directed by John Badham, who directed, of course, War Games and Saturday Night Fever and Blue Thunder, just came out in a beautiful edition from Shout Factory. And what's interesting is Badham originally wanted to make that Dracula in black and white. By the way, Dracula has a killer John Williams score. Really great score. If you heard the score, I'm sure, go to YouTube. Do it now. Go to YouTube and punch in Dracula theme John Williams and tell me if it doesn't kick ass. It's great. It's a great theme. But so John Badham always wanted to make it in black and white. So when they put it out on video, he was able to basically desaturate the film and it's almost black and white. Well, what Shout Factory did was they went back and they found like an original print. I don't think they took it off the negative, but they got an original print of the color version, and both versions, the desaturated almost black and white version and the color version, both come in the new set. I think I have it here. Do I? I do. I do. Here it is. This is the Shout Factory version of Dracula that just came out. So that's kind of cool. Do you and the Post-Geek Singularity have any favorite Dracula movies and TV shows and any forgotten gems people should see? I'd be disappointed if nobody shouts out Monster Squad. I've been hearing a lot about Monster Squad lately because I was talking about how actor Stephen Mocht, who was in Monster Squad, was almost Captain Picard. That was Gene Roddenberry's choice. It came down to Patrick Stewart, and Gene Roddenberry did not want Patrick Stewart. He wanted Stephen Mocht, and they ended up picking Patrick Stewart. And history was made. But for those of you who have not seen Fred Dekker, it's Fred Dekker, right? Fred Dekker, the Monster Squad. I love the Monster Squad, where it's basically a riff on the original Universal Monsters movies. It's great. It's a lot of fun. Wolfman's got nards, right? So yeah, Monster Squads. Are you only looking for Dracula movies or vampire movies? Because there's a lot of great... I always tell people one of my favorite vampire movies of all time is Hammer's Vampire Circus. Also, I of course love Daughters of Darkness. I really love The Hunger. The Hunger is one of my favorite... The Hunger and Near Dark are two of my favorite vampire movies of all time. But yeah, but Dracula is different. I mean, interesting. You're asking specifically about Dracula, and I'm trying to think... I don't know about that. I'd have to think about that. What do you guys think? Any Dracula movies you guys like that might be overlooked? That was a good letter. I like that letter. I like when people are into things, the specificity of things. The specificity of things is always a good thing. Captain Confidence sent in a tip. Saw Dark Waters and Richard Jewell leaving upset, but in a good way. Elements fictionalized for dramatic effect, but how people can cause damage to others is shocking. Any movies that have left you having a righteous sense of anger and changed your opinion on a matter? Ooh, that's a good question. You know what? I remember my mom took me to see The China Syndrome. The China Syndrome with Jane Fonda and Michael Douglas and Jack Lemmon. And it was about a nuclear power plant here in Southern California that has faults, defects in it. And I remember it was the first time I was scared of, it made me scared of a nuclear accident. You know, and it was also around the time, China Syndrome was, it came out around the time 3 Mile Island happened, and for real. And I remember just, as a kid, it made me mad. China Syndrome made me mad. And Indicator put out the China Syndrome, I think Indicator put it out in the UK, so I had to get the Blu-ray. It's a great Blu-ray, and it's funny because I remember the end of the movie. To see the China Syndrome, you can't not remember the end of the movie. The end of the movie is very, very tense. Jack Lemmon's incredible in it. But I didn't remember much about the front of the movie, and I quite enjoyed it because not only is it about the Ventana nuclear power plant, but it's also about journalism and television journalism. And Jane Fonda plays a journalist that, because she's beautiful, she's not taken as seriously, and I really like that. It's interesting. So it's aged pretty well, even though a lot of the technology is very outdated, especially the TV technology. But there's something sort of very today about the movie. But I didn't remember that. But I watched it in the last year. But that was a movie that got me really, like, I wanted to become a nuclear activist. You know, even though I believe in nuclear power, I do. I think nuclear power, properly handled, could be very useful. That's not to say there aren't problems with it, because there are. But yeah, so that's what, you know, Dark Waters. I really want to see, because I love stories about company or big companies or big entities, their malfeasance and somebody going in and fighting the man. You know, like whether it's Aaron Brockovich or something like that. My favorite being, of course, Sidney Lumet's The Verdict with Paul Newman, where burnt out alcoholic lawyer Paul Newman takes on the Catholic Church, and he's got really no chance of winning, but he's the righteous underdog. If you guys haven't seen The Verdict, it's a very quiet movie. It's very contemplative, but it's one of my, every time I watch it, I think it came out in 1982. Every time I watch it, I'm like, man, I know Paul Newman won the Academy Award finally for The Color of Money. He absolutely should have won for The Verdict. I think Gandhi won. I think Ben Kingsley won for Gandhi, which I understand. I get it. But man, Paul Newman is so good in The Verdict. So good. And it has still to this day, I'm thinking about the moment right now. There's a reveal in The Verdict. I'm not going to tell you what it is. That is so good. And you ask me about making me angry. Because I'll watch The Verdict. I kind of watch The Verdict like once a year. And every single time that I watch The Verdict and it gets this scene, I get talking about angry. I get angry. Captain Confidence. I get angry watching The Verdict. I'm like, God damn it. Fuck. You know, it just makes me every time. And I've seen that movie. I've probably seen The Verdict like 30 times. Because it's just one of those movies that I love. And it makes me angry. Eduardo Barral sent in a tip. Who knows what kind of movies will get made because of AI? What people fear is being left out of the process, and probably rightfully so. And Renee Stoutzendijk is hot, and the opening sequence in Stalker is amazing. Have you seen The Invisible Guest? No, I have not seen The Invisible Guest. Have you seen The Invisible Guest, Tallulah? Have you? Have you seen it? Well, that's very nice of you to be quiet all of a sudden. Okay. You want to see what's on my desk? Huh? Oh, yes. Yeah. You want to bark? You want to do something crazy? Have you seen The Invisible Guest? Have you? Tallulah sometimes watches movies. So does Gilbert. No, she loves coming on my desk here. No. This is my water glass. Okay, you have to get down, Tallulah. I know, everyone. I know you're very cute in your little sweater. I get it. I know you love me. I know, baby. I know. Yeah. Yeah? Is that true? You're very loquacious today. Did you hear that? Ooh, do that again. Yeah. I know you. Okay, fine. She wants. I'm out of cookies. Everybody. Send cookies. She went away. Perhaps she doesn't want a cookie. Okay, this is all I got. I got half a cookie for you and a full cookie for you. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. I have not seen The Invisible Guest. Renee Stoutsendijk. Forgive me, I can't pronounce the Dutch language. It's a great language. I love it. But she was all in Spetters and The Fourth Man. No, Tallulah, boy, you just, what's up with you today? You're gonna eat my hoodie? Jason S. sent in a tip. He says, we always hear about so-and-so movie that flopped, costing the studio a lot of money. With so many movies that flop each year, how are any of the studios still in business, especially with big budget movies flopping? Well, very good question. Nowadays, a lot of large movies, the financing is shared by many different entities. You'll see, whenever you see a different logo at the beginning of a movie, oh, come on, Gilbert. Oh, no. The dogs are getting restless. They want me to go play with them. When you see different companies' logos at the beginning of a movie, those are people that have all put in money. Now, most movies, they share the risk. Unless, of course, it's a franchise property, like Marvel movies or movies that they know. Those are usually, that are gonna do well. Those are usually mostly financed by the one entity. But it's the risk is shared amongst studios. And, of course, part of the reason when they talk about how much movies cost, they also roll in the overhead of the studio into each movie's cost. There's definitely creative accounting. So money is spread around. Money is definitely spread around. Taki75 sent in a super chat and said, are you familiar with The Hairdresser's Husband? No, I am not. But I'll have to look into that. John Suntress is here. By the way, I did an epic podcast with John on his Word Balloon podcast, and I kind of went off. Would you come on, you guys? John says our podcast posts tonight. My podcast on the Word Balloon podcast with John Suntress posts tonight. How about the 1990 Dracula TV Kids Adventure Show made in Luxembourg with Bernard Berens and Jordy Johnson as a tycoon Drac? Wow, I don't know that. I didn't watch that. Swag Props, our man Cal is here from Swag Props. Hi, saw Messiah and The Gift on Netflix. Messiah started out well, but gradually became a bore as it progressed. The Gift, on the other hand, is very intriguing, almost similar to Dark, but in Turkish. Wow, I'll watch that. That sounds good. Messiah, for those of you who don't know, is caused a little bit of controversy because in Jordan, where they showed it, they were wondering if it was going to be sacrilegious, and it's basically about a man who may or may not be the title Messiah. And I've only watched the first couple episodes, which I thought was really intriguing, but it's a bummer that it got boring and predictable. I wonder, does it stick the landing? Is it one of those shows? I mean, I'm gonna admit something to you guys right now. There are certain shows, and Messiah seemed to be one of them, where I get it. I understand. The whole show is going to be, is he or isn't he? And I'll bet you if I just watched the first 2 episodes, which I've watched, and then I watched the last episode, I will get it all. Oh, I bet I will. Because, and I bet the question is ambiguous to the point where they're like, nope, he's not really. He gets discredited, but whatever happens in the final episode begs the question, maybe he is the Messiah. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, that's right. Manifest came back, and I have not watched it. I'm going to go watch it right after the show is over. Manifest, the show I love, my latest hate watch. I can't wait after the insanity and the ridiculousness of the last episode of last season. I haven't been able to continue my hate watch of Manifest, a show that has one of those impossible premises that doesn't make any sense, that you can never answer effectively. You can it's going to lead you down a rabbit hole of cockamamie BS. But I'm going to watch it anyway because God knows somebody should. Hey, and they brought it back. But, yeah. Now, normally I don't want to do this, but I love this. This is great. I do love top 10 lists. Who doesn't? So, Stephen Goggin, one of our cornerstone imagination connoisseurs here, says he sent in 2 top 10 lists. Dear Rob and listeners, Here are 2 top 10 lists. One is a list of movies covering all movie genres, and the second top 10 list is my sci-fi list. The first list, Local Hero. By the way, Local Hero, Bill Forsyth's Local Hero. What a great movie that is. Peter Riegert from Animal House and Burt Lancaster. Heck yeah. The Blues Brothers. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. The Producers, both versions. The Wicker Man, the original. Star Trek the Motion Picture. 2001 A Space Odyssey. Apocalypse Now. And Glengarry Glen Ross. And finally, at number 10, Bloom, Ulysses, Stephen Ray. That's a fine list. What an eclectic list you have there. I'm a big fan of Local Hero, and I was happy to get the Criterion Blu-ray, which just came out. Now, your top 10 sci-fi films as follows. I'm going to read them from 10 down. 10, Zardoz. 9, Flash Gordon. 8, Krull. 7, The City. Is that with Kiefer Sutherland? Do you mean Dark City? I'll just say The City. 6, The Martian. 5, Robinson Crusoe on Mars. 4, one of my favorites, Jeff Murphy's New Zealand film, The Quiet Earth. Oh my God, do I love The Quiet Earth. You know, I tried to buy the rights to The Quiet Earth when I was working on Lord of the Rings. The New Zealand Film Commission was across the way, and I went over like 4 times. I wanted to buy the rights to release it on home video. I was going to start my own home video label, and that was going to be my first movie. And I could never get anybody to answer the door. Nobody was ever there. It's crazy. Number 3, Interstellar. Number 2, 2001: A Space Odyssey. And number 1, Star Trek: The Motion Picture. I hope you've enjoyed this list. And as always, live long and prosper well, Stephen Goggin. Any list that has Star Trek: The Motion Picture at the top of your favorite science fiction movies of all time is a list that I approve of. I don't know. Very interesting. Robinson Crusoe on Mars, a classic, certainly, where they reuse the Martian war machine from War of the Worlds, is in that movie. Also on Criterion. Number 6, you have Ridley Scott's The Martian. I love The Martian. I think The Martian might be one of my favorite. It certainly is one of my. I was going to get to that. I don't think I ever played the trailer when I was playing trailers for my best of the decade. But The Martian is one of my favorite movies of the last 10 years. So good. And, you know, Interstellar I wanted to love. I read the original script that Jonathan Nolan wrote when Steven Spielberg was going to direct Interstellar. And when they go through the black hole, it gets very, very different. And I really preferred the original script to what Nolan did with it. I think Interstellar might be my least favorite Nolan movie, but I do appreciate what it was trying to do. I really do. I still don't know how the robot in that movie is ambulatory, but, you know, there's always mysteries in science fiction movies. And, of course, I love 2001. But a fine list, and I want to thank you for sharing it with we imagination connoisseurs. This is a good question. Dean Mikitich, our boy Dean, who's been here for a while, who I hope I'm getting his last name finally correct. Remember, I was definitely challenged by saying his name when I first started reading it. Hi, Rob, and the Post-Geek Singularity. In episode 312, you talked about how the documentary extras on DVDs and Blu-rays have pretty much disappeared because studios realize that most people buying the discs are not watching them. Before DVDs came along, we used to get making-of documentaries as promotions on VHS, either before the film came to VHS or just after the film had come out in the theater. In the UK news rag The Sun, there used to be promotions of these VHS tapes where you would collect 6 or 8 tokens and then take them to Woolworths or W.H. Smith to get your free copy. That's how I got a hold of the Making of Star Trek Generations VHS tape. I must have watched that tape over 100 times and was fascinated by the way they did the Enterprise D saucer crash. I also remember that back in the 90s, we used to get a lot of making-of documentaries on TV. But when DVDs started coming out, these documentaries stopped being shown on TV. I guess due to the early success of DVD, that was the reason. While I already had a love of movies, these making-of documentaries made me appreciate the films even more and gave me a better understanding of what happens when making a film or TV show. You've mentioned that Disney Plus has a lot of extras for the Marvel films that never made it over to physical media. With physical media dying out, is the disc just not getting these extras? Do you think other streaming services will follow suit and start adding making-of content to their own platform? Or is this another medium that will die out and you'll only get specials every now and then for the huge box office films and popular TV shows? Well, Dean, we've talked about this a lot. First of all, great question, great letter. Thanks for writing in about this. Look, as you know, I don't know if I can see it. Let me see if you can, if I can see. Okay, see above me, like way at the top. I have all of the movies I either produced or DVDs, special features that I worked on surrounding me here in the Robservatory, and I love special features. And they used to spend quite a bit of money, as I've talked about before, sometimes, as with the Lord of the Rings budgets, to make the special features for Two Towers and The Return of the King, millions of dollars. My company was also were the recipients of millions of dollars worth of money to make special features over the years. I just submitted a proposal for I'm actually going to be doing some special features this year, believe it or not, for an upcoming release that I'll talk about once it's been announced. But my delivery date is March 23rd. Then I have to submit all my documentaries, and I will be doing that. As a matter of fact, the right here, behind that. Oh, guys, see, the dogs are running out. They think. These guys, they're great watchdogs. No one will ever get past them. But in there is all my tapes, which I have to transfer. But it's sad. The DVD medium is basically, look, as I've said before, Laserdiscs are really where special features started for me. Criterion Laserdiscs starting in 1984 with, of course, King Kong and Citizen Kane. Those are the first two Laserdiscs Criterion had released. Laserdiscs had been out before. Laserdiscs were actually, interestingly enough, the Laserdisc format was introduced in, I believe, 1978. And one of the two test cities for Laserdiscs, I think it was Houston and Seattle, Washington, my hometown. So that's when I first saw Laserdiscs and became enamored of them. And, I mean, it wasn't until 6 years later that Criterion came on the scene. After when Laserdiscs were first released, it was from MCA, Disco Vision. And interestingly enough, if you watch, and you can get it on Blu-ray finally, the masterstroke that is Airport 77. If you buy, if you get by the way, Airport 77 is a delightful movie. And when my first trip to California in 1976, I think it was 1976, I went to Universal Studios, and on the Universal Studio tour, when I was a little kid, they were filming the scene where the 747 crashes into an oil derrick, and then, of course, crashes into the Bermuda Triangle and sinks. But they were actually shooting the miniature shot in the big tank back there where Bruce the Shark is. So anyway, in Airport 77, it was the first time I ever saw a Laserdisc player, because they actually put a laser. I mean, it's such product placement. It's like, hey, and they put it in, and Jimmy Stewart comes on and gives a farewell message to that plane. And that was the first time I ever saw Laserdisc, so I became obsessed. But yes, so special features started back when Criterion started doing discs, really in '84. And yes, you're correct. They would make making of pieces. When I was working at Full Moon Entertainment on things like Arcade, before I worked on Arcade, we would do the Video Zone magazines. So you'd buy a Full Moon, or you'd rent a Full Moon movie like the Puppet Master movies, or Trancers, or Doll Man, or Subspecies, whatever Full Moon movie floated your boat, or Demonic Toys. We would make these Video Zone magazines, which were like magazine shows about the movies and that you'd bought and other movies that Full Moon was putting out. And I would cut behind the scenes features. And the first behind the scenes featurette that I ever cut was for a movie called Spirit of the Night, aka Huntress, that starred Jenna Bodner. And that was my first. It was a cool behind the scenes featurette, and they had shot behind the scenes. So that was the first time I ever edited that material. And it was a lot of fun. And those were VHS tapes, because that was all they had back then. And then, of course, when Laserdiscs, I mean, they did, actually, that's not true, but they had Laserdisc. Full Moon put the stuff out on Laserdisc too, and you'd get the Video Zone magazines. But mostly it was VHS. And then, of course, when DVDs came, special features exploded. Everybody wanted special features, and directors got involved, and you could see how interested anybody was. You could gauge their interest by seeing if a movie had a lot of special features on it. It was because the director, special features really were director driven, because you needed their participation to make great special features. And of course, the king was Peter Jackson and the Lord of the Rings discs. But I have to say, the Hobbit behind the scenes features are amazing because they knew what they were doing from the get-go. And I love the Lord of the Rings discs, but the art form had evolved. And if you get the Hobbit movies on Blu-ray, watch those special features because they're incredible. But yeah, I there's no reason for them anymore. And I think, unfortunately, movies are all pretty much made the same way. And unless you have a film that has a really compelling story behind it, making movies, especially when you're on set, unless you're having a big effects-driven movies, there's not a whole lot, there's not a whole lot to do. Like Leah Thompson, who is in Back to the Future, directed a movie, her first feature film. She's doing a lot of TV. She made a feature film that her daughter, Madeline Deutsch, she's married to Howard Deutsch, the director who directed Pretty in Pink and Some Kind of Wonderful. That's who Leah Thompson's married to. So she made a movie called The Year of Spectacular Men. And that was the last movie that I was on the set of, and I shot a bunch of footage. But my interaction with her was minimal, and I was just shooting behind the scenes. So I don't know what happened to it. It played festivals. I did see the movie. It was streaming. But I don't even know, what they did with the footage that I shot. So I was hired to shoot, and you turn it in. But unfortunately, I think the era of the DVD special features like that are over. There's a lot of people still working, including Cliff Stevenson, who's doing impeccable work when he can. There's also Daniel Griffiths at Ballyhoo Films, who works a lot for Shout Factory, and he's doing some great work. But there's just no more money in it. The budgets are really, really small. The project that I'm working on now has the smallest budget of any special features that I've ever worked on, and that's fine. That's just the world that we live in. It's great that some companies are still putting out discs with special features, which is terrific, and I do miss it. I do miss it very, very much. But it sort of gives me hope that it was nice to see more features, especially on Endgame. There was a lot of stuff that never made it to physical media, which bothered me. But it was really interesting. If you weren't watching, for anybody who's watching physical media, if you're paying attention, I was talking to Cliff Stevenson last night, and he put it interesting. He put it interestingly, and he was correct. The lead up to the launch of Disney Plus, Disney was dumping titles on 4K. Some of their biggest titles of all time, like Lion King. They were doing that in conjunction with the new Lion King, but with no hoopla, no fanfare. I mean, it was as Cliff put it, it was a fire sale. They were just it was the last hurrah of Disney home video, because why does Disney want to put out physical media anymore when you can go to Disney Plus, which is what they want, and they're literally putting everything under one roof. We'll see how long it stays that way, but Cliff was telling me they have certain deals that movies are going to leave their platform. They already have. They already deplatformed Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides, things like that. They'll have different deals with people, but eventually, Disney Plus wants you to go to their platform, at least for now, and get everything. That's why, they are putting out that 27-disc Star Wars set in 4K. So I guess you can get the McClunky version of Star Wars on 4K. I will be getting that. You have to. I don't know if I'll ever look at it, but I think that there's sort of a. Why am I saying a lot? Do I say that a lot? I think that you have to get that just to have all the Star Wars movies on 4K, because why not? But we shall see. It's too bad. It's too bad, because I really loved special features, but again, they're only as good as the participation of the people making the movies. So, yeah. Jeffrey Mao is here. And this is an interesting letter that Jeffrey Mao has written, and I'm going to read it. Hi, Rob. I wanted to provide an addendum to my last letter about how Star Wars could have been redone. My idea for it was born out of my dissatisfaction with how much time had passed between the end of Return of the Jedi and the beginning of The Force Awakens. With that amount of time, it became inevitable that there would be sort of a soft reboot reset, and we got what we got. If we were going to go back to that galaxy far, far away, it should have been in that 10 to 15-year time frame. The main stars would still be young enough to play active roles, but it would allow for the introduction of newer, younger supporting characters. That's what I've been saying since the beginning. Due to the whims of Hollywood and how franchise films get developed, greenlit, and produced, we rarely get this perfect return to franchise glory. Usually, it's something 20 to 30 years later, and aged stars are brought back for roles they weren't really meant to play. Indiana Jones and Terminator, I'm looking at you. Since we can't go back in time and redo the Star Wars sequel like I speculated on in my last letter, the only thing we can do is learn lessons from the cautionary tale of Disney's stewardship of Star Wars, like you have mentioned several times before. Ryan Coogler's direction of Creed and screenplay was a great way to continue an old franchise, continue to use its iconic but aging star in a way that allows for him to play a supporting role. I would say, though, this was also helped by having Rocky Balboa come before, absolutely. So we were able to get the aging hero with one last fight job score to settle trope out of the way. If we had jumped from Rocky 4 or Rocky 5 directly to Creed, it probably wouldn't have been as smooth as we had with Rocky Balboa in between. So, at least, it appears that Marvel has learned some lessons about how to gracefully transition the focus away from their prime stars with the retirements of Tony Stark, Iron Man, Steve Rogers, Captain America, and the death of Scarlet Witch, Natasha Romanoff. It only shows a confidence that Marvel has in their remaining roster, but also a realistic understanding that IP holders and creators can't keep going back to the well forever. In Marvel's case, they have the luxury of making new movies and shows with new heroes. With other franchises that are tied to a specific character or characters, well, sometimes you just have to end things and end them well, which oftentimes have proven hard to do. Which leads me to our other favorite franchise, which seems to be in some kind of hell right now, which is Star Trek. Star Trek is in kind of an unusual position where you have a first-generation core of heroes that they tried to go back to, perhaps mistakenly so, in the Kirk, Spock, McCoy original series, but also develop a second generation reasonably well. However, only the next generation crew went into movies with decidedly mixed results. So far, cinematic Star Trek seems dead. The Noah Hawley and Tarantino films are very likely not happening, and let's face it, they'd be one-offs anyway, with only TV existing so far. We'll see how Star Trek Picard fares in the next season of Star Trek Discovery. The newly reformed Viacom CBS will have to figure out what to do with Star Trek. At the very least, going into the future with Star Trek Picard is a good step as opposed to the past. However, it's only short-term, as you can't build around Picard for any long period of time. Since Star Trek has always been built around a ship and her crew, let's acknowledge that Deep Space Nine was a ship, just not a moving one, we need a new one. Even though it's not appearing like Picard is sticking to that model initially, I'm at least hopeful that it ends up turning into that. I still don't think that Picard is going to be the future of Star Trek, but its success or failure will point the way toward the next step. If successful, it will at least keep the ship afloat and the sails pointed in sort of the right direction. I couldn't avoid the nautical puns. It's that next hypothetical step that will be Star Trek for the next decade or so. Thanks, Jeffrey Mao. Well, as many of you know, I'm a huge fan of Ryan Coogler's Creed. And he and his father were huge fans of the franchise. He came up with that idea and willed the film into existence. But why I like it so much is, as Jeffrey Mao touched on, I thought it was a brilliant way to continue the Rocky franchise and reinvigorate it with new characters for a new generation and still honor the past. To me, it is the template. If you're bringing back a new, or you're going to try and renew an old franchise and you still want to have continuity, look no further than Creed. It is not, of course, Ryan Coogler is black, and I'm sure that was part of the reason that they wanted a black filmmaker to make Black Panther, but I really think, and I would hope, that the reason that Ryan Coogler was seen to be perfect for Black Panther was because what he had done and how he showed he could play in the sandbox of a previously existing franchise. And I thought, man, I think Creed, I thought he knocked it out of the park with that, and gave Sylvester Stallone one of his best roles. My God, the like Jeffrey points out, we saw the aging Stallone in Rocky Balboa, and that stepping stone was probably very helpful as far as the movie was concerned, but man, was he good in that. He was so good in that. And I love that movie. I do. Let's see. Wow, there's a lot of people had sent in stuff. Mark C is back. Speaking of sacrilegious, have you ever seen The Body with Olivia Williams and Antonio Banderas? No, I have not, but I should. I love sacrilegious movies. I love religious movies too. I find religion to be very interesting. Captain Confidence sent in a tip and says, wish Chow Yun-Fat had another chance in Hollywood. Chow Yun-Fat is my man. I mean, talk about, I've got great big love for both Tony Leung. Everyone knows how much I love Tony Leung. And Chow Yun-Fat. Look no further than John Woo's masterpiece of action, Hard Boiled, where Tequila, played by Chow Yun-Fat, is one of the most badass dudes ever. He also plays jazz. He drinks tequila. And I mean, come on. If you guys haven't seen John Woo's Hard Boiled, Bullet in the Head, or The Killer, what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? But I love Hard Boiled, and Tony Leung is the man. Sorry, I didn't even finish. I didn't finish reading your tip. Wish Chow Yun-Fat had another chance in Hollywood. Tarantino badmouthed his performance in Replacement Killers. Not sure they would work together. I secretly wish he shows up in John Wick 4. Also, it'd be fun to see Jean Reno. Any favorite movie assassins? Well, my favorite movie assassin, probably Jean Reno in The Professional, probably. But, I really like The Accountant. I thought The Accountant was good. I think The Accountant does not get enough love. I know those are more modern movies, but the movie Assassins. I like the movie Assassins, written by the Wachowski brothers. But I'm thinking old school. What's a great? I can't think of it now. I can't think of anybody now. But I've got a great action figure of Jean Reno, and I also got one recently of Matilda. It's not that great of a figure, but I'll have them on display soon. When I hit 20,000 subs, you'll see those figures. But I love Chow Yun-Fat. I do. God of Gamblers. I just love him. Stubble McShave sends in a tip. Did you see the Bigatures when you did these special features for Lord of the Rings? If so, how much did you salivate when you saw the Isengard model? As I understand it, it was really big and detailed. Okay, what Stubble McShave is talking about are the Bigatures. Instead of miniatures, they were called Bigatures because they were so huge. Now, the biggest miniatures that I have ever seen were the miniatures for Master and Commander that Weta built. They were like 40 feet tall, the ships, and they put them into Wellington Harbor. And unbelievable. But since you're asking about Lord of the Rings, I will tell you, when I went up to Alex Funky's model unit, when I was covering, when we were down there for Two Towers, and I was standing in front of Gondor, the Gondor miniature. Huge, huge, huge miniature. It was gigantic. And I was watching, it was a fell beast's point of view shot. And there was a snorkel lens, and it was doing single frame, like click, click, click. And, standing around the Weta workshop, whether you were in Funky's model shop or whether you were in, when I say Alex Funky, he was the miniature director of photography. He was the miniature DP, director of photography, yes. I believe he worked on the original Battlestar Galactica, if memory serves. But so I was standing in front of Gondor, and I'm watching this snorkel lens, like click, click, click. And there's a bridge. There was like a bridge where people would walk over. And the snorkel lens is on a, it's like a lens here, and it's on a big, not a crane, but a big device, where it's being moved. And I'm just watching it, and I'm thinking to myself, and there's nobody around me. And the camera's going click, 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 and it's getting further. I watched for a long time. And I just was watching how the camera moved and how far it would move incrementally. It was fascinating. And right before the camera hit the bridge and wrecked the model, somebody, I don't know where, somebody comes from just behind me, puts their hand down, the proper moment, right as the camera was going, they pick up the bridge, so the camera could continue going. So it was a shot of the fell beast, the point of view of going under the bridge. It was the best. I love being down there, working on the Lord of the Rings, and then working on Chronicles of Narnia, and just hanging out at Weta was like the greatest thing ever. If you like models and miniatures, as I do, it was incredible. So yes, Stubble, I did see the Bigatures, and it was so much fun to hang out. Echo Base Network says, link for the first cut of the documentary is in your DMs. Oh, well, Echo Base Network, they have made a documentary. I don't know if it's a Fandom Menace approved or in association with, but a documentary about the sequel trilogy that they're going to release shortly. Yeah. Darren is here. Daz Nuke. I think, and I don't know. I say Nuke, but I know you're in the UK. Zodiac is a classic with great special features. Zodiac, of course, the David Fincher film. David Fincher is a maestro of special features. Any of his discs came with incredible, whether it was Fight Club, whether it was Seven. I mean, Seven was one of the great modern special features where you had a director really get down and involved. I love David Fincher's special features. Zodiac has great special features. It's amazing how many visual effects they use to recreate period San Francisco. So yeah, a huge fan. Great call, by the way. Alexander Wilson is here. He sent in a super chat and says, Norman Jewison's movie A Soldier's Story was a masterpiece to me. Oh my God. It touched a lot of items close to me. I feel like it's one of the greatest movies ever made, but it's never in the mention. Thoughts? First of all, I love Norman Jewison. And I love A Soldier's Story, which is a legal thriller within the military, obviously. And I love A Soldier's Story. And it was great. I want to say, wait, did it come out in 80? Is it 84? Hang on. I need to find out. Let's see. When did that movie come out? It is September 14th, 1984. And it won an NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Actor in a Motion Picture. And of course, it was based on a play. And it stars Howard E. Rollins Jr. and Adolph Caesar. Oh my God, Adolph Caesar is so good in A Soldier's Story. Yeah, Norman Jewison, man. That I saw that movie in a theater, and it's great. And you know what? You're right, Alexander. There are certain movies that at the time, I would put another movie that I always think of with A Soldier's Story, Ragtime. Milos Forman's Ragtime, which is another movie that I absolutely adore. It's different subject matter, but it still deals with race issues and things like that. I loved Ragtime. Nobody ever talks about A Soldier's Story. Nobody ever talks about Ragtime. But at the time, they were both pretty big movies. I think A Soldier's Story, was it nominated for... and Herbie Hancock did the music. Herbie Hancock did the music. Of course, Herbie Hancock famously did the music for Michelangelo Antonioni's Blow Up. And Herbie Hancock did the music for one of my favorite movies of all time that nobody knows about, Round Midnight. If you've never seen Round Midnight, it's a jazz music. It's about jazz. And Dexter Gordon played basically himself. But yeah, A Soldier's Story. What a good call. Now you've made me want to go see. I don't own A Soldier's Story. I want to know if I can get it. Does it exist? Hasn't been put out? I don't know. The Richard says, Nosferatu is superior to Dracula, in my humble opinion. He is my favorite creature. I believe I have every version and several figures. R.E. Drac, though, there is a gory version by Dario Argento. Yeah, it's not the greatest. I love Dario Argento, but I like modern, recent Dario Argento. Not so good. But, yeah. Who doesn't love Nosferatu? And, of course, the original Nosferatu, and then Klaus Kinski as Nosferatu. No, I'm a huge fan of Nosferatu. And the design is great. The design for Nosferatu. When I think of a vampire, I don't know if everybody thinks this, but when I think of vampire, I think Nosferatu is what's been burned into my mind. Or the Salem, because the Salem's Lot vampire from Tobe Hooper's TV version looks just like Nosferatu. I'm a big Nosferatu fan. I think Nosferatu is the quintessential. I mean, yeah, there's the sexy Frank Langella, I've got a pompadour perm Dracula, but to me, the real vampire, a creature of the night, is Nosferatu. Absolutely, 100%. Alexander Wilson says Ava DuVernay was Marvel's first choice for Black Panther, but she turned it down. This was before Creed came out. Yeah. By the way, I have a huge crush on Ava DuVernay. I think first of all, she's incredibly talented, despite A Wrinkle in Time. I think she's a talented filmmaker, and she is just so cute. She's so cute. And I hope she does The New Gods. I don't know if that'll ever happen. I think they're going to... the Eternals are beating them to the punch. It'll be interesting to see if the Eternals is really good, then maybe they will make The New Gods finally. We'll see. I mean, I'll be curious to see where that goes. Who knows? Who knows? Let's see. Soldier Story, man. I got to go get that. I got to go see it. You all should see A Soldier Story. Yeah, I think so. Let's see. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you know what? It's been almost 2 hours, and after my rocky start, which I apologize for, my technical snafu where I literally, you know what I forgot? It's not that the microphone wasn't on. I'm not going to blame the dogs. I literally, with this software, you have to add your audio. I forgot. I did not add my microphone. I'm talking away. Didn't even occur to me. I'm like, blah, 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 blah. So that was not good. So I apologize. But ladies and gentlemen, this brings a conclusion, a shattering, senses-shattering conclusion to Robservations, episode number 314. I want to thank all of you imagination connoisseurs, you members of the Post-Geek Singularity community. I want to thank everybody for generously supporting the channel. Thank you for writing letters. Please keep sending me videos. I love getting videos from people. And as I said, if you send me a video, what I'm going to do is I will be compiling videos, and I'll release every week. I'll put just the videos of people's greetings up as a special video on the Burnettwork.net. Or no, on YouTube. I'll put them on YouTube. So they'll just go up as a piece so everybody can see their videos. I know that Stubble kind of got boned because whatever happened with the sound on my other video, but you'll see Stubble's video on that video. So send me more videos in. I want to see where you live. I want to see where you go. I want to see your kids. I want to see anything that imagination connoisseurs want to share with the rest of us. Also, there's a lot of really cool stuff being posted on the website in the Imagination Connoisseur Gallery. So if you want to share things, tattoos, models that you've built, your action figure collection, whatever it is, you can go to the website at theburnettwork.net and punch in or send us pictures or videos or whatever. And also 3-word movie reviews. There's all kinds of fun stuff on the burnettwork.net website. I've heard it's a rabbit hole you can get sucked into, and you can read all the letters that I read here are also reposted on the internet with your typos usually. So be ever vigilant, people. I want to thank my moderators. I want to thank, of course, the Honorable Mayor Mike Bodden of Riverdale, Iowa. I want to thank Detective Jim Boyers. Detective Jim, he will make sure that you're on the straight and narrow. Of course, the great Greg Smith. Louis Yu, also for writing a letter. And, of course, Jordy Lyons. And I know that he was here, so my old moderator, Terry, the Sheriff of Nottingham, I just want to thank him for being Terry, the Sheriff of Nottingham. And most of all, I want to thank all of you for joining me. I will be back on the John Campy Show tomorrow. By the way, if you're interested in anything that happened in Collider and what was going on, Mark Fernandez, who owns Collider now, came on and appeared on the John Campia Show today. I watched some of it. It was pretty interesting. And I want to say kudos to Fernandez because John and Fernandez were not on the best of terms, and John reached out. John Campia is a really good guy. And I thought it was a pretty ballsy move on John's part to offer an olive branch to Mark Fernandez and have him come on and explain his side of the story. And John did not pull punches. So if you want to know about that Collider situation, please go watch John's show today. That's the John Campy Show today with guest Mark Fernandez. If you like these chats, when I remember to use the mic so you can hear me, if you like these chats, please hit like, or as Davey504 on YouTube says, slap like now. Lamau69. If you like these, hit like, share them, and participate. I love you guys. We have a great community that is percolating here, and let's keep it going. And again, send me videos. And remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I bid you all a farewell, and have a better day.